Hey, everybody. Hey, and welcome to lesson 5 of A Course in Miracles. We're going to be covering lesson 5, and to supplement lesson 5, I'm going to be reading just a little bit from the text. The text really does help to elucidate the lessons, and I'm going to be reading from chapter 6, verse 12, the difference between the ego's projection and the Holy Spirit's extension is very simple. The ego projects to exclude and therefore deceive. The Holy Spirit extends by recognizing himself in every mind and thus perceives them as one. Nothing conflicts in this perception because what the Holy Spirit perceives is all the same. Wherever he looks, he sees himself, and because he is united, he offers the whole kingdom always. This is the one message God gave to him and for which he must speak, because that is what he is. The peace of God lies in that message, and so the peace of God lies in you. The great peace of the kingdom shines in your mind forever, but it must shine outward to make you aware of it. A beautiful paragraph, and if you want to read that for yourself, there's acim.org. Okay, and it's again chapter 6, the alternative to projection, verse 12. By the way, really important, as we're reading through the text, if you read a couple paragraphs or like a page or two from the text, and then you flip to a workbook lesson, it most of the time is going to line up perfectly. And I feel that that one really elucidates today's lesson, which is lesson number 5. I am never upset for the reason I think. This is a big one. The ego will fight this one. And notice that in the beginning lessons, the ego is very tempted to fight almost all of them. The ego, maybe your ego isn't, but it's not uncommon for this first couple lessons to feel a little bit like putting on a tight pair of shoes or like some kind of unfamiliar walking pattern. Or if you've ever learned how to do an exercise properly and you've been doing it the wrong way your whole life, it feels a little bit awkward. So these first couple lessons are a little bit hard for the ego mind to wrap its head around. I am never upset for the reasons I think. It already has the ego going a million miles a minute. So let's dive into the lesson, and let's get this really clear so that you can ease into the lesson and enjoy your day today. This idea, like the preceding one, can be used with any person, situation, or event you think is causing you pain. Apply it specifically to whatever you believe is the cause of your upset, using the description of the feeling in whatever term seems accurate to you. The upset may seem to be fear, worry, depression, anxiety, anger, hatred, jealousy, or any number of forms, all of which will be perceived as different. This is not true. However, until you learn that form does not matter, each form becomes a proper subject for the exercises for the day. Applying the same idea to each of them separately is the first step in ultimately recognizing they are all the same. I have to pause there. This is so important because the ego will have you thinking that your excuse for misery is fancier, better, more equipped to be valid than somebody else's or than some little idea. Okay, this particular excuse, now this is a good reason to be in misery. And the mind is very convincing. That ego mind is very convincing. It just so happens to also be part of your physical being. So your mind's coming up with all these excuses, all these thoughts, all these ruminations, all these stories, all these whatabouts, all these, well, ain't it awful that this happened to me? The stories and the stories and the stories and the stories. And the goings on. Oh no, I have a toothache. I'm probably going to have to go to the dentist. It's probably going to cost thousands of dollars. I'm probably going to go into debt. Then I'm going to get homeless. Then I'm going to be on the side of the road. Then I'm going to be on Skid Row. Then everyone I love is going to leave me. And the mind gets you off on a million different tangents. The anxious mind thinks thoughts like I just gave. The depressed mind thinks all kinds of, oh, I have to figure this out. And what if it never gets better? And then you're just ruminating in the darkness and the loneliness or whatever it is. Whatever your thing is that your mind has you so convinced is so important to be focusing on. if you guys have ever seen the Cesar Millan show, where he goes like that to the dog, I want you to notice when your mind's taking you for a ride and it's crept in there and given you a million different reasons to follow it, like a convincing siren song. Let me follow this thought and let it take me to misery town. No. Again, as the Course says, I am not upset for the reasons I think. It does not matter what your mind is coming up with for reasons that you need to feel miserable today. Doesn't do us any good. Doesn't do us any good to give the mind that kind of power over our lives, because as you noticed, your mind, it goes up sometimes, it goes down sometimes. It's good thoughts and bad thoughts, good, quote unquote, good thoughts and bad thoughts. Good things happen, bad things happen. It's about equanimity here. And how do we get to that peaceful state of equanimity? That is what the Course is teaching us, to transcend the levels of this monkey mind. The mind, as you've noticed, as if you've been on this earth more than a couple years, you probably notice that your mind will take you for a ride. So it's nothing out there, as we've already covered in some of the previous lessons. It's nothing out there that's upsetting you. And to be clear, your emotions are valid. It's okay to have emotions about things that happen. That's fine. Emotions are a natural part of human existence. So we're going to feel emotions. We open to the emotions. We let them happen. Notice that this lesson doesn't say anything about, not feeling things. What it's saying is, I am not upset for the reasons I think I'm upset. To continue on with the lesson, when using the idea for today for specific perceived cause of upset in any form, use both the name of the form in which you see the upset and the cause which you ascribe to it. For example, I am not angry at blank for the reason I think. I am not afraid of blank for the reason I think. But again, this should not be substituted for practice periods in which you first search your mind for sources of upset in which you believe and forms of upset which you think result. In these exercises, more than in the preceding ones, you may find it hard to be indiscriminate and to avoid giving greater weight to some subjects than others. It might help to precede the exercise with the statement, there are no small upsets. They are all equally disturbing to my peace of mind. Then examine your mind for whatever is distressing you, regardless of how much or how little you think it is doing so. You may also find yourself less willing to apply today's idea to some perceived sources of upset than to others. If this occurs, think first of this. I cannot keep this form of upset and let the others go. For the purposes of this exercise, then, I will regard them all as the same. I'm going to pause here for a second and speak to the part of you that's doing the whatabouts right now, because I know. Ask me how I know. I know that your mind's saying, what about women's reproductive rights? What about starving children? What about the injustices of the world? What about the terrible things? What about? So this, to be clear, this lesson is not speaking to those things not mattering. This lesson is also not telling you to not be a human being. It's not saying that you're an automaton. It's not saying, okay, I'm not upset for the reasons I think. There's stuff going on out there, henceforth I shouldn't be upset. That's not what it's saying. But what it is pointing us to, this is really important, and this is something that can change everything. It's a huge game changer. It's saying we don't have to cling to the upset, okay? And also, by the way, I'm getting a little bit ahead of the lesson, but what makes more sense, truly, if we're being very honest in the human experience, what makes more sense on a day-to-day practical level? Just practically throughout our day, when we wake up in the morning, all the way to when we go to sleep in the evening. What is more practical? Is it more practical to live in a peaceful state in the here and now in the present moment, facing what's directly in front of us with the equanimity and peace that is the ultimate truth of who and what we are? Or does it make more sense to be spinning ourselves like a little tornado every single time something on the outside world upsets us? We're much more effective if we're moving from the truest part of ourselves instead of moving around like one big giant triggered, you know, ball of upset. And if we're being really honest, to continue on with just going a little bit deeper down this rabbit hole, if we're being very honest, there are some big, very important things happening in the world that are going to really touch us in the heart, especially those of us who come to the course. Most of us are sensitive. Most of us have a deep caring for other beings. And so there is a place and a time for taking right action in the world and doing what needs to be done and rolling up our sleeves and getting the work done. But if we're being really honest, the way the ego works is it uses that little doorway that I just gave of there should be action and we should have emotions when injustices are happening, to be sure. However, it uses that against us for the majority of our lives. And if we're looking at a pie chart on our day-to-day lives, the ego will take, you give it an inch, it will take a mile. It will use up on that pie chart. It'll use up 99% of your mental energy to be an upset about anything and everything. And you get something good and it's a fleeting moment and then you lose it, as such is life. Things come and they go. And this is a big, huge reason to be upset now. And it's just like that for decades. The ups and the downs, the ups and the downs, the ups and the downs, and then the downs, 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 and the travesty and the tragedy and the drama and the trauma and the chaos and the breakups and the divorce and the whatever it is. We could play whack-a-mole our whole lives with reasons to be upset. None of them are the reasons that we're actually upset, is what the Course is telling us in this lesson. The reason we're upset will be revealed and unfolded throughout the next couple lessons, but to just sit with this simple fact, I want you to just open to the possibility, even if it's hard for you to just really accept it, I want you to open to the possibility that you are not upset for the reasons that you think. So to close the practice, search your mind for no more than a minute or so and try to identify a number of different forms of upset that are disturbing you, regardless of the relative importance you may give them. Apply the idea for today to each of them, using the name of both the source of the upset as you perceive it and of the feeling you experience. Further examples are, I am not worried about blank for the reasons I think. I am not depressed about blank for the reasons I think. 3 or 4 times during the day is enough. And so, just a moment. I love that this lesson is just a moment. It just takes a moment. Just a moment a few times throughout your day to consider, I'm not worried about this financial situation for the reasons I think. I'm not depressed about my relationship ending for the reasons that I think. I'm not feeling afraid of being alone for the reasons that I think. I'm just doing some of the greatest hits of our egos. I'm not afraid of failing for the reasons that I think. I'm not afraid of XYZ for the reasons that I think. If we just sit with that, not trying to, like I said in prior lessons, we're not trying to figure anything out. We're simply dropping this into our mind's eye. I'm not upset ever, almost ever, for the reasons that I think. Again, there are big, huge, like iceberg-sized pain points that are going to happen in our lives and we're going to feel emotions for those things, and that's natural. The Course in Miracles is not telling you that when you, for instance, lose a loved one, that you're not going to feel intense sadness, or that when some big tragedy happens in your life that you're not going to feel things. What this lesson is pointing to, and what the Course in Miracles is mostly focused on, is the day-to-day human suffering that is just plain old not useful and plain old not necessary. It's unnecessary suffering. The unnecessary suffering that we put upon ourselves by having a million and one things, with the little things and the big things, the financial situations and the divorces and the relationships and the work stuff and the worry and the, the day-to-day, the petty little, and the petty little ego hitting the pan, the ego just making a bunch of noise, clanking around in your body, mind, spirit. And then you're giving it too much credence. You're giving it all the space in your mind. You're giving all of your life to this clanking of the ego. And we can actually step back and just drop a pebble in our mind's eye and say, perhaps I'm not upset for the reasons that I think. So just let that drop in there into your mind's eye. Let it fall into your heart and let it blossom throughout the day. And watch your mind for little reasons that it comes up with to be upset, to be annoyed, to be indignant, to be judgmental, to be sad. What you may find, like I did, and that I still do, as a human being, I still experience periods of forgetfulness where my mind is enjoying a beautiful detour down Ain't It Awful Club, and I'm upset. And then I come to realize, well, look at that. I've forgotten. I don't need to be sitting here in misery right now. There's an option for peace, which is another lesson at a later date. Okay. Okay, everybody. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this lesson. I'll see you in lesson number 6.